All Indiana Politics is your premier source for Indiana politics, focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
I'm Garrett Bergquist, government reporter for Wish TV. On November 7th, Indianapolis voters will decide whether to give incumbent Democratic Mayor Joe Hogsett a third term. This would make Hogsett the second longest-serving mayor in history after Bill Hudnut. His Republican challenger is Jefferson Shreve, the founder and CEO of Storage Express and a former city-county councilor. I asked both Shreve and Hogsett to sit down with me for an in-depth interview. Shreve accepted my invitation while Hogsett declined. Here's my conversation with Jefferson Shreve. Joining us now is Indianapolis Mayoral candidate Jefferson Shreve. Jefferson, welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me back.
So let's begin with public safety. You've made that the central focus of your campaign. You've said you want to focus as much or more on officer retention compared to officer recruiting. How would you go about doing that?
More on retention than recruitment, because that is contrary to the path that the current administration has taken. Joe Hogsett has put a lot of money and attention behind the recruitment classes, but the results haven't proven out over time. We still have more officers leaving the force year over year than we have had since he started the job. We're down 129 officers from when he took office on January 1st, 2016. We need more police. So we've got to retain the talent that we've got and then backfill that talent with new officers that can be attracted to this community. We are paying more, but as we have raised those starting salaries, that compression of compensation, veteran officers to new recruits, has disenchanted, has angered even the veteran officers on the force.
You've called for restoring the use of a full-time public safety director. If you're elected, what are some things that you're going to look for when you're deciding who to hire for that position?
The public safety director is that civilian executive that will live and breathe and be accountable for the metrics of moving our city in a safer direction than what we have had over the last 8 years of the Hogsett administration. We've got to move our homicide rate down, our non-fatal shootings, our stabbings down. We've got to pull up the solve rate on our capital crimes, and we've got to get the numbers of officers on the force back up. And so I need someone that's going to live and breathe this space every day, so I, as mayor, can focus on that amongst a lot of other responsibilities toward growing this city. Every modern mayor of Indianapolis has had a public safety director until Joe Hogsett, and the results are in. It's not worked well.
Now, you mentioned the crime solve rate. What are some things you're going to do to try to bring that up?
Well, not everyone knows what we mean by that, but that's the identification and conviction of the person that commits a murder. And it was just an administration ago under, I think, Bill Benjamin as Deputy Chief of Investigations that we had that rate of over 80%. Today it's about 30, 33, 35%. And so you've got an odds-odd chance of getting away with murder in this city. We have to solve those capital crimes. And that requires officers on the force that have the experience level in investigations to chase these people down, find them, take them through the process, and work with the prosecutor and the courts to convict and put them away.
In a recent debate, the topic of protecting versus policing communities of color came up, and you said that the issue was IMPD moving too slowly in terms of adopting body cameras and dash cams. Is this, at the end of the day, a technology issue, or is it something else?
Well, it's a component of public safety, but we've got to rely increasingly on technology because we will long-term be challenged to have enough human componentry to public safety. But on a force of our size today, we have 25 police cars with dash cams. To me, that's extraordinary. 25 cars on the streets of Indianapolis have dash cams. We are so far behind the times on some of that pedestrian technology that is important to both the utility and the transparency that citizens should expect. I served on the IMPD Body Camera Commission. We met maybe a dozen times, and it took us years and years to get body cams on the vests of the officers of this department. Our police like them. Citizens comport themselves differently if they know that the camera footage is being recorded, and our police have that confidence that when they're doing their jobs in an appropriate way, they will be protected from unfair persecution or claims brought against citizens or lawyers.
Well, but at the end of the day, even if you adopt that technology, is that the be-all, end-all, or do we need to look at some changes to policing more?
No, it's not. No, it's a tool. Dash cams are a tool. Body cameras are a tool. There are lots of tools. Gunshot detection systems are a tool. But we have to have a combination of both hardware, technology, tools, and then most importantly, talented members of the force that want to stay in our department. So we want to retain our veteran officers and then work to recruit new people to come in to work for a department where they feel led and backed. Policed, and yet not over-policed. Policed from the standpoint of proactive, community-facing posture from a public safety standpoint, rather than just reactive. The Hogsett administration will take credit for a reduction in some of the nonviolent crimes, which is crazy because our police don't have enough bandwidth to pursue crimes like auto theft investigations. Well, it's no wonder the numbers are down because we don't even pursue auto theft investigations.
Your public safety plan includes a ban on any new sales of military-style rifles. It includes getting rid of permitless carry within the confines of Marion County and raising the age to purchase a firearm in Marion County to age 21. You've caught a lot of criticism from conservatives on this. What do you say to them?
I want to support our police force. I want to listen to the leadership, IMPD and ISP, who have testified in favor of elements such as the retention and now reinstatement of permitting requirements for the concealed carry of weapons. It's a tool that we took away from them. It's a tool that they had for the last 60 years. It makes their work more dangerous. It's harder to do their job if we take a tool like permitting requirements away from them. It wasn't onerous. If you want a concealed carry weapon, you go through the process, you can get a lifetime permit. I am not running for a legislative position. I'm not going to change this. I have said I will advocate for, through the due process of the General Assembly, for some of these tools that are important for Marion County because some of our challenges are different than other parts of our state. On the age, the legal, lawful age of firearms purchases, I advocate homogenizing that at 21. If I go to a gun store, the age is 21. If I go to a private gun and knife store and buy, say, a rifle, it's 18. So I just want to homogenize that rule, not complicate it, not layer it on, but simply homogenize it at 21. If you've got to be 21 to buy a Budweiser, you ought to be 21 to buy a Beretta.
Let's turn to economic development. You've talked about making Indianapolis the hub of a research and technology corridor coming down from Purdue and a life sciences corridor coming up from IU. How do you plan to do that?
I have talked about that. I'm talking about marshaling the investment that others have made and determined that we will do in central Indiana. President Mung has said that he's keen to develop that hard tech corridor from Lafayette down to what will be Purdue University in Indianapolis. President Whitten has talked about developing that STEM corridor from IU Indy down to Bloomington. We will have two Research One universities distinct on the near west side of our city that will amplify their investment in technology and by extension technology transfer that can be a huge driver for the economy of Indianapolis over the next 20 years. If we look at where we stack up against some of our peer communities, I would say and point to Columbus, Ohio. They were smaller than we were population-wise. Their GDP was lower than ours was just a decade ago. Their secret sauce has been Ohio State University. Okay, so we now have the opportunity to amplify 2 Research One universities right downtown with differentiated missions. And to amplify that, we can take what we've invested on 16 Tech and work from that angle to on the technology transfer piece to create new opportunities, new jobs, new companies that will in turn repopulate some of our downtown, both from people in employment and office space and use and the development of our economy. Heavy on the life sciences, that'll be a big part of it.
What's in this for people who live in Marion County who don't work in the STEM fields?
Well, I think a strong Marion County is good for people whether they work in the trades industry, if they're in the hospitality industry. I think that vibrancy, people that live, work, and play downtown lift us all up. And so you may be a researcher or you may be working in parks maintenance along the White River. But what's in it for others that aren't directly in that space? Oh, there's something in it for everyone. Our system is hardwired to be supported by those that choose to lay their heads in Marion County. You pay income taxes where you lay your heads, not where you work. And so we want Marion County, we want Indianapolis to be the most attractive community for people to live, work, and play. But we need them to live here. We've got to grow our population.
Speaking of living in Marion County, what's your plan for improving the supply of affordable housing?
So that on the surface is pretty simple. It's supply and demand. We have suffered through a cycle of 8% rent rate growth for the last couple of years because the supply has not kept up with demand. We've got to remove some of the barriers of red tape and some of the uncertainty that the developer investment community faces when they take a project through DMD and our Department of Business and Neighborhood Services. We've got to open up the throttle so developers can create new and better affordable housing stock to meet the demand. And as supply comes into parity with demand, we will see rates tighten up. That growth that we have suffered from, which exceeds household income growth, will come back into alignment.
What's your plan for dealing with food deserts? We've got quite a few areas where there's no easy access to healthy, fresh food.
Yeah, retail patterns have changed. The Amazon effect is a factor, certainly. But we need to repurpose a lot of the dead retail space that we do have. And I'm particularly interested in opportunities to repurpose the empty CVS, Walgreens, and Rite Aid stores that we have all around this county because they are oftentimes located in the center of those areas that we would describe as food or pharmacy deserts. I'd like to have a systematized, predictable set of incentives to take the private owners of those properties to bring in grocers that would set up shop in these bite-sized retail components. These are roughly 14,000 square feet, whereas a Kroger store might be 80,000 square feet. So if we can take this dead, disused, former CVS Walgreens space and bring in compact grocery retailers that want to provide services, I think that is a pathway to a solution where we can do that on scale. And we can call out some little opportunities, some little successes, but we've got to do this on scale if we're really going to move the needle on that front in Indianapolis.
Throughout this race, you put forward several policy proposals that are broadly similar, if not identical, to some of the things Mayor Hogsett has proposed. Examples include the gun plan that we discussed earlier, capping assessed valuation on property taxes, and expanding the mobile crisis assistance team. Why is that?
Well, I don't think that we are in parity on a lot of things. I do agree with the idea of investing in mental health. The mayor's proposal for next year has one MCAT unit, $2 million on a $1.6 billion budget. I think we need to amplify that materially. 80% of the runs that the IMPD go out on are mental health related. I would, big time, increase our investment in mental health and in those MCAT units. In several other areas, he and I are not in alignment, not talking about the same programs. Look, I'm a believer in the Second Amendment. I believe in responsible gun ownership. Citizens ought to have that right, but they need to take on the responsibility that goes alongside that. He and I don't think agree on that, but that's a right that I will defend. And so I will work through the channels that exist, statutorily, constitutionally, with our General Assembly to advance the interests of Indianapolis in ways that are actionable rather than just political talking points.
You've spoken extensively about having a better relationship with state lawmakers. You alluded to that earlier in our interview. Day to day, how would you go about doing that?
Yeah, well, it's not an illusion. It's actionable. You've got to invest the time in the relationships. We can't solve all the problems, all the challenges of Marion County without the cooperation at the other end of Market Street. The mayor has to be advocate for, lobbyist in chief for the city. And so you do that through time invested in relationships. I'll spend a lot of time with Representative Pressel, who chairs Roads and Transportations, for example, to help him understand why a rationalized road funding formula makes sense, not just for Marion County, but for the donut counties that make up the region. I'll leverage a lot more time in that space than Mayor Hogsett has, who has rarely shown up at the General Assembly. And when he has taken positions relative to the General Assembly, it's after they've gavelled out.
What's one issue that we haven't discussed that you believe is not getting enough attention in this race?
I've taken a little time to draw attention to the sad state of animal care services. This is something that's personal for my wife and me. It's shameful, the condition at which we've let animal care services degrade to, and it's representative of a promise made by a mayor a term ago or two to correct a problem, to invest in a problem where we have made zero progress. And so that is just one example of an area where I would say, well, Mr. Mayor, you said we were going to knock this down by this date, 2023, and we've made no progress. I would say, Mr. Mayor, in 2019, you said we were going to solve our homelessness problem by 2023. We really have made no progress. There's talk. We have an identified location for a low barrier shelter. Thankfully, because of the generosity of the General Assembly for that $20 million. But I'm a candidate. I've got to run on a coherent plan and sell it to the citizens. He's a two-term mayor that's got to defend a record of accomplishment or a lack of accomplishment to the citizens of this city. And the contrast between the record and my plan is distinct.
What makes you the best candidate for mayor in this race?
So I've got the executive experience in standing up and growing an administration, a business of some scale for 30-odd years, intermixed with a decade of municipal experience. I understand the org chart of the city. It's that combination of business executive experience and runtime experience in city government that make me the better candidate of the two. It's something like what Mitch Daniels brought when he came from Lilly and the federal side of it, and then came into the state government side of it. That combination of experiences will help me stand up an administration with top shelf talent. It's not a one-man or one-person job. It's the ability to stand up an administration with top shelf talent that will work alongside you to move this city forward.
Jefferson Shreve, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That was Jefferson Shreve, Republican candidate for mayor of Indianapolis. Once again, I also extended an invitation to Democratic Mayor Joe Hogsett, but he turned down my invitation. Early voting is already underway, and Election Day is on November 7th. And remember, you can catch All Indiana Politics every Sunday morning at 9:30, only on Wish TV. I'm Garrett Bergquist. Thanks for listening.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.